Hey fighters, thanks for
Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fight for Liberty. Tonight, we have a really special guest. I'm super excited about it. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about whatwe're.knowledge.com. If you guys haven't heard me talk about this already, it's an awesome source to get CBD, CBG, Delta-8, THC stuff, all online, all legal in all 50 states, and all of the money that gets passed around in this company, it's all within the Liberty movement. So you're supporting people that are out here doing really good work, like Dan Berman, Tom Queter, a bunch of other friends of ours. So go on over to nugofknowledge.com and check them out. But now we just announced almost 80 new products that are going to be added to the website here within the next couple of weeks. So definitely keep an extra lookout for new stuff on there. And of course, when you're going on there, don't forget to use promo code UNITE. You can get 10% off your first purchase, and it saves your profile in there, and it helps me, it helps FSM, and it helps everybody. So again, go to nugofknowledge.com, check it all out, use promo code UNITE, and get a little bit stoned with me and some other cool people. But today we have somebody who I'm very excited to talk to. She is running for governor of Oklahoma, Natalie Bruno. Welcome to the show.
Hey, David, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
You know, just another day living the dream. Been very, very busy lately, trying to jump on all the podcasts that I can, and was really grateful that I was able to get on yours.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. I've seen a few episodes of other shows that you've been on, and we've gotten to interact on Clubhouse a decent amount lately. And I'm very excited for what you guys are doing out in Oklahoma. I've talked to Todd. I've had Kevin on the show. I've talked a lot about both of them and you on the show already. So, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma does some really awesome numbers when it comes to like statewide Big L races. And, I'm excited to see you guys grow on that.
Thank you. I'm excited as well. We've been doing a lot of great work here. We work really cohesively together. Everybody's really hands-on, and we are very fortunate that we are a group that not only works really well together, but really well on a national level as well. We like to joke around that we're everybody's favorite state. So we just want to keep going that direction.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think you are pretty much everybody's favorite state. I know you're mine. But I also live in like a dystopian hellhole of New York, so it's not hard to find states that are better than mine. So tell us a little bit about what brought you into the movement in general, and then what actually brought you into the party to get active as like a Big L libertarian.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to make the joke that I have literally been registered as everything at some point in my life. Whenever I first graduated high school, I was like, I'm not going to be a part of anything. So, of course, I registered as an independent. And then once I went through things a little bit more, I was like, well, I'm very socially active, and, my ideology is aligned this way. So maybe I'm a Democrat, registered that way, then realized, oh, nope, this isn't my group. I think I'm actually a Republican because I'm all about smaller government. Got over there, realized they're really not as much about smaller government as they like to say that they are. And so a friend of mine kind of along the way, who was already a libertarian, was like, Natalie, you always talk about how you are socially democratic and fiscally Republican. That's basically a libertarian, right? And so myself, being uneducated about the libertarian platform as I was like, libertarian, liberal. No, I'm not. That's not what I am. And of course, he explained what the platform was. I dug into it more, started reading up on some books and everything, and realized, oh, wow, no, this is exactly where I belong. These are my people. And so once I kind of registered as a libertarian a couple years ago, I tried to get more involved on a local level here, but unfortunately at the time, our state was not as well organized as it is now. And so I ended up just getting involved with the national party. I became a national member, worked on Joe and Spike's campaign, became very active. And then subsequently, once Oklahoma became more organized, I got more involved on a local level as well.
That's awesome. What were some of the first books that you read up on to learn that you were a libertarian?
Oh gosh, well, just like everybody else, I read Libertarian Mind. I read some mostly articles and pieces on Reason and stuff like that. So not all of them were books. A lot of them were just like articles and stuff like that were kind of positioning the libertarian platform. So that's kind of high level what I've gotten involved in. I've more so been looking up on libertarian authors lately, just because I didn't realize how many we had. So my Audible list is completely full right now of probably about 5 different books that I'm working on.
Nice. Yeah, I find it funny because a lot of my friends and like the people that I talk to on like the comms and the messaging stuff, most of my friends in the party absolutely hate the whole like fiscally conservative, socially liberal like phrasing. It is kind of cringe, like especially when you've been doing it for a couple of years and like listening to Gary Johnson say it like over and over and over and over again. But it brought so many people in, and it really is like.
I mean, that's how I came
in.
in.
The amount of times that I've heard people say that was the phrase that brought you in. Yeah. And so I think it's important to remember that like even the cringe shit works sometimes.
It like, does, especially.
Even if it's just overly simple. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yep, I agree.
I think there's a little bit of a lag. Didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine.
So you got brought into the movement through a friend. So not even like a campaign or the party at all. It was just somebody that said like, "Hey, you sound like a libertarian." Was he active in the party also, or just identified you correctly?
No, he is not active in the party at all. He's just a registered libertarian out of Texas, which is where I graduated high school. It's been a good part of my youth there. And so, no, not active at all, but just was like every time I would post something political, he would, of course, have to get that. I jokingly would call a dig. It's like, that's very libertarian of you, Natalie. That's very, you're a libertarian. And eventually he beat me over until I gave in and was like, okay, you're right.
I love that.
It's all about consistency, right?
Right. 100%. So what made you go from, all right, I'm into this, I like the libertarian ideals, to I want to run for office as a libertarian?
That's a really good question. So essentially at the beginning, I was like, I just want to help run campaigns. Marketing and advertising is my jam. I love being out with people. I've done nonprofit work, fundraising and stuff for years. So I really wanted to be kind of behind the scenes. Not that I didn't want to be a candidate, but I had this ideology in my brain that you have to essentially be a perfect individual to run for office. You can't have any skeletons in your closet, couldn't have done anything wrong in your entire life. And so I kind of felt like I didn't fit that mold. I've been divorced before and remarried and all those kinds of things that typically would draw kind of some negativity. But then as I really started digging into it, whenever people like to bring up the whole, if you want change to happen, you have to sometimes be that change. And so I thought about it. And when I looked at people like Trump, for example, and some other politicians that have 10 times the amount of skeletons as me. I mean, literally all I have is the fact that I've been remarried a couple times and some other super minor stuff. I was like, okay, well, I am actually probably an angel compared to most politicians. So I don't know why I'm making up excuses for myself. I just need to do it. And so I was going to run for a state Senate seat last year at a special election, but there was a weird kind of deal that kept me out of it, wherein you had to be registered in your district for at least 6 months. And whenever I had moved, I was too slow to re-register because my town's not very big. So I just had no problem driving to the other part of town. So I didn't re-register in my district. So that kept me out. But I'm one of those people that believe that things happen for a reason. And so after speaking to our state LP and trying to decide who was going to run where, and we discussed me going ahead and running for the governor's seat. And so here I am going for it.
That's awesome. I like I've already heard from you so far, just like questions that people are asking you on Clubhouse. You're very like succinct with your answers. And that was the first thing that I noticed. I was like, oh my God, she doesn't ramble. It's like a libertarian that knows how to like answer in like a reasonable time and like actually answer the question that was asked of her. It's like, this is almost unheard of. So I'm excited that you took the leap and decided that the skeletons in your closet weren't too much of a barrier, because I think Trump did a lot of good in that one area of like just finally killing that mindset, because I was the same way. I've been wanting to run for office since I was young, and so like I thought about like my high school grades. Like, I need to get good grades, otherwise I won't be able to say that I was a good student when I run for president someday. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just a constant horrible thing in the back of my head. And then Trump did his thing, and I was like, oh, anyone can be president. Okay.
Right. And I agree with you 100% on that. And especially when it comes to, I think just in general, there is more of an understanding that an education doesn't mean that you're smart or smarter than anybody else. Having a political background doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a better politician than anybody else. That just means that you're easier to get turned over by lobbyists, in my opinion. And so I think that it's the people that have worked really hard to get to where they're at that are going to be the most reliable, because they're used to being, boots on the ground, all walk and no, less talk. And that's kind of where I fit in here with Oklahoma, is that I am self-made. I worked really, really hard. I have a really great, glow up story, as they like to kind of refer to it. And I think that I'm somebody that is very relatable to the people throughout the state.
Yeah, I 100% agree that it needs to be someone that's actually put in the work for their own life and has like personally invested in seeing the state or the city or whatever office that you're running for succeed. And it's also really nice because a lot of people in the LP might not know your name, but there are a lot of people in Oklahoma that do. Like, you actually have a reputation in your state, and you're not just someone that existed online or in just libertarian circles for the last however many years. You've actually been out there in your community setting some groundwork there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's something that is really important for anybody, especially libertarians, since we don't have realistically the financial backing and the PACs and super PACs that the other larger political groups have. We have to build a reputation or a brand for ourselves, so to speak. And so even whenever I thought I was just going to be supporting campaigns, when you support campaigns and you support your state affiliates, you are still a representation of the Libertarian Party, even if you're not a candidate. And so it was very important for me to make sure that I was out in the community, bringing positive light to the party and the people within the party. So we're not just seen as, the Joe Exotics of the world and, stuff like that. Not that there's, anything wrong with our fun radical groups, but they need to see that there's some serious libertarians as well that are actually out there trying to make a difference in the communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about some of the things that you've done to do that. Like, how have you been able to actually make inroads with your community? Because a lot of people don't know where to start with that. It's difficult to actually like try to step into that circle if you've never really been in it. And it seems cliquey sometimes, like especially the nonprofit world is really cliquey and hard to break it.
It really can be in some areas, but you would be surprised how much they will welcome people with open arms. So there is a large population of typical volunteers and board members, which are usually your older retired people who, are just trying to find something to do and kind of keep themselves occupied after they've been retired. And outside of that, they don't get a whole lot of younger, more youthful, idealistic people. So anytime that a nonprofit has people coming and wanting to volunteer or asking to be on a board, I will tell you, I have never heard of anybody say no. They're usually like, oh, thank goodness. Yes, please. We have the same tired people that have been on our board for the last 10 years. We need some fresh blood. Please come join us. And so like my suggestion, especially when it comes to, I mentioned earlier about marketing yourself, right? So everybody, whenever you are, if you're a candidate or if you're, trying to grow membership of your state, you want to kind of have a brand of how you want people to know you. And you're also going to have your main platform pieces, right? And so what I did was I tried to pick nonprofits that I specifically aligned with when it came to what I'm passionate about. So for me, it was predominantly children. So I have 6 kids myself. And then just the foster community and children in general has always been something that's really kind of pulled on my heartstrings. And so I made sure initially to reach out to CASA, which here in Oklahoma, it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates for Children. So anytime a child has been removed from the home and into DHS custody, they will assign a CASA that basically acts on behalf of the child, independently of like a DHS worker or stuff like that, to help explain to the judge in an unbiased form of what is in the best interest of the child. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years. Realized how important the attorneys that acted on behalf of the children were. So when I moved back to Oklahoma, that's how I joined the associate board for Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, just because I saw some of the amazing work that those attorneys do pro bono for children in the state. And then I had also, that's one of the things that had gotten me to work towards my associates in alcohol and substance abuse counseling, because in the state of Oklahoma, literally every single case that I had been assigned were all cases where the children were removed because of some form or fashion having to do with alcohol abuse or substance abuse. And so, so being part of that was really important. And there's such a strong need for volunteers in that area because there's, the system is overloaded with children that have been removed. So especially if you're looking for somebody that will accept you really quickly, anything involving foster children in your state, I guarantee you they'll snatch you right up. And then I've also been coaching basketball and soccer for about the last 4 or 5 years as well. I played sports when I was in high school, when I was younger, and my kids played sports. So I felt like that was a really great way to volunteer, especially since I'm going to be at the games and practices anyways, right? So that's kind of how I led into those initial groups.
That's awesome. So you turned soccer mom into a political career. I like that.
I like how you phrased that. But yeah, I pretty much did. And then from there, started working with other activity groups here. So like we have the Citizens Against People Abuse, the coalition, against people abuse, and some other actual political organizations that align with the same platform as the Libertarian Party. And we've been doing stuff with them as well.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome. I can't stress enough what you said about like focusing on something that you're actually passionate about. I see that issue just inside the party too, where people get burnt out because they think this like find a need and then fill it, rather than finding the need that they fit the best in, and they end up getting stuck on like a policy team arguing about deep intellectual stuff that they don't care about, instead of like outdoor knocking. But even within what we're talking about, I've done that before too. Like I used to deliver Meals on Wheels, and I mean I ended up enjoying it, but it was just like not necessarily a community that I cared that much about, or a problem that I really understood that much. Like I turned into like a advocate in my adulthood because I was homeless for a time and starved for weeks at a time, and know what being food insecure is like. But back then it was just kind of like this thing that I did to get the credit for my Boy Scout badges because I needed to do some community service.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree. It's really important as well, because people can tell when you're genuine about something, right? If you are faking it, people can tell, no matter how good of an actor you think you are, people can tell when you're not genuine. And so it's really important, especially if you're going to be a candidate or try to grow membership, to pick items that you're actually passionate about, because when you're passionate about something, it's like an infectious disease. Like, people can feed it off of you when you get excited and you start talking about something, and people can tell that your face lights up and it's something that you're really passionate about. Like, they start to feel that. And so if you're like dead inside because you're doing something you don't care about, they're going to feel that too. And they're going to be like, I don't know about this person. They're kind of, I'm getting the good vibes from them, so, people think that they have to be everything to everybody. Like, oh, so people care about children, so I need to do children, and I need to go kiss babies and help old people. And you don't have to do everything. You just need to pick a couple things that you're passionate about or good at and just stick with those things.
Yeah, for sure. And you already mentioned a couple times about marketing yourself, and so definitely want to get into. You are a marketing professional. It's what you've done with your life. So how have you been able to transition that into just for yourself and for the campaign, and actually like using real marketing skills in politics?
Yeah. So
I know that's a big question.
It is a big question, but it's a really good question. And I'm obviously very passionate about that area because I chose to do that as a career of all the things I could do. So one thing that I always like to tell people who are campaigning or like I said, or growing membership, because this really works across the board. This can even work towards, state LPs, is that you really have to decide what your brand is going to be. Like, you are a product and you're marketing yourself. When you're talking to people, when you're engaging with people, like, you are portraying a brand. And so you really literally need to sit down and say, okay, so what are my focuses? What do I want people to know about me? And what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Right. And so when we do that, it kind of gives you a kind of like a funnel of things to kind of stick to within that funnel. And it also helps with storytelling. So I tell people all the time that storytelling is a really great way to take your brand and apply it to everyday people, because people want to know personal links between you and what you're talking about. So any opportunity that you have to tell a story, it helps people relate to the message that you're trying to give more, especially with the Libertarian Party as a whole. Our ideologies and our platform, if you try to explain it in a sentence, is going to seem pretty radical to a lot of people, especially if they're used to being a Republican or a Democrat. But when we actually take the time to apply a story to it, like a personal narrative, or to explain it on a deeper level and how it applies to them and meet them where they're at, from a marketing standpoint, I have very rarely found people that at the end weren't like, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, yeah, okay, that doesn't sound so crazy. So learning how to do storytelling and relate personal stories to what you're trying to activate, right? Consistency in what you're saying is really important from a marketing standpoint when you're marketing your own brand. And, I also tell people to be cognizant of what they're posting and how they're posting it. Not to say that, your personal page is your personal page, but anything that you have that's out in public. So whether you're commenting on news stories or commenting on articles or other people's things or anything that's public, try to understand that you are selling your message to the masses, right? So you have to make sure to word it in a way that's going to be perceived well and is going to be perceived positively. If you write negative stuff and troll things all the time, that's going to portray you as kind of like a negative person, right? And even though it's fun and some people want to be keyboard warriors, if you're trying to grow membership or if you're trying to be a candidate, that's not going to be something that's going to portray well to the masses. Another thing that I always tell people to do as well that, believe it or not, does help with your marketing is to find a couple of mentors within the Libertarian Party that you can use as like a sounding board. I love the saying that if you are the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
Oh, that's my favorite saying. That is literally my favorite life saying. My dad said that to me my whole child, lived by it. Yes.
Yes, I'm the same way.
Huge fan.
My favorite quote, I say it probably enough times that it probably drives people nuts, but it's true. And so I always make sure I have 3 or 4 people that I consider mentors to me, that anytime I'm stuck, or if somebody asks me a question that I haven't been asked before, or if I know I'm going to have to explain something in a way that I haven't been used to explaining it, I have mentors that I can reach out to for help at any given time and be like, hey, I trust you and I value your opinion. How should I handle this? And, having those other people to help you craft your message makes a world of difference.
For sure. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize how many of like the biggest names and the people that they respect the most do that. It's like, even the great Spike Cohen has bounced ideas off of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it happened. Like, you have to have that sounding board. There's no way for you to just be good enough at messaging to not need that anymore. There's no point where you've moved past a necessity for that. That's words.
Yes. I mean, that's very true. I don't know of anybody that doesn't have either a mentor or a board or something that they go to, to sound things off of. And, that helps with networking too. Tying back into, marketing yourself. You're not only having to market to people within your state, which ties into one part, which is know your audience, right? Mm-hmm. So if you are in, for example, like myself, I'm in Oklahoma and it's a very red state. Okay. Yep. And I'm a candidate. So my goal is 2 things, right? I want to obviously become elected, but I also want to grow the Libertarian Party as a whole to help, all the Libertarians behind me that are going to be running. Right. And the best way that I'm going to be able to do that is if I make sure to craft my messages in a way that meets people where they are, if they're a Republican or a Democrat, and isn't put in a way that can be off-putting. So for example, abortion. Last year this year we had the heartbeat law that was put into place. And so we are, everybody's really upset about women's rights and abortion. And so obviously, since I'm in a very red state, there is a very strong pro-life presence. Now, I personally, I am pro-choice, even though I would never get an abortion, but I don't believe that I have that right to decide what's between what a doctor and a woman thinks is best for their individual, situations. And so, but I don't sit there and post on my page, I am completely for abortions, right? Because I know right there, 55 to 60% of any possible voter is going to see that and be like, oh, nope, I can't vote for her. So what I do is instead, I think, okay, so how can I spin this in a way that lets me still be true to my values, but is better taken by potential voters? And so what my messaging was instead was, hey, so I think we can all agree that we want there to be less abortions, right? Like there's nobody out there that's like, ooh, yay, more abortions. Like we all want there to be less abortions, but we're focusing on the wrong thing. Just like we've seen with the war on drugs, with, before whenever abortion was outlawed, it does not keep people from getting abortions. It just makes them more unsafe, right? Yes. So why don't we focus on something we can handle? And let's talk about, making birth control more accessible and making other types of contraceptives more acceptable or easy to get, and education. Those are things that we can all agree on that is important and will help reduce the amount of abortions, and everybody will be happy with that, right? Okay, cool. So there's ways that you can craft your message that still stays true to your libertarian platform or your personal views without basically turning off most of the people that would potentially be voting for you. I still stuck by what was important to me, but I met them where they would absorb it better. Right.
Do you guys still have abstinence-only sex ed in Oklahoma, or have you guys moved into the 21st century by now?
Oh, gosh, let's see. So when my daughters they're in high school right now. And so when they were in middle school, and actually my stepson too, they do a general sex education kind of course, but they don't really necessarily speak to abstinence necessarily, but they also don't go into as much detail as I think that they should about, contraception and stuff like that. It's just more of a, hey, this is how things work. There are condoms, there are this, there are STDs, and then they kind of leave it to the parents from there.
Gotcha. So there is definitely like room to improve there.
Absolutely. But, that's one of those things too, where it's kind of it's been left up to parent choice, which, I am for parent choice and having control over messaging that goes to your children. But there are other things that we can do to educate children outside of just school. I mean, everybody has cell phones now. Everybody has Google. Everybody's on social media. There's other ways that we can put out information that people in the right age group will be able to absorb without necessarily having to rely on public education.
There are always better ways to educate kids than public education.
Right.
I find it, because that's a hard conversation, like in New York, where there isn't necessarily that much of room for improvement in that area. We actually have some pretty solid sex education in New York. They cover like contraceptive and like, they do a pretty in-depth job there. I mean, I was homeschooled, so I didn't see it, but like that, a bunch of my friends and exes and stuff were in public school. And so we've had this conversation a lot. So trying to have that conversation with like Republicans in New York about how like that libertarian answer, it's a little bit trickier because I don't get to say like, here's the ways that we improve it to stop abortions. Because you can get over-the-counter birth control in most of New York. You can actually get birth control like from your school nurse in most of the state. And then we have like a good sex ed thing. So most of my arguments aren't actually legit in New York.
Well, those would be perfect
but
arguments.
When I go to southern states, it's nice.
Yeah, that would be perfect arguments for here in Oklahoma. Sorry if I cut you off. I think we have a little bit of a sync off. And so I try to give you a space before I start talking. But yeah, all of that would be amazing for Oklahoma to have. And even just educating the parents and stuff too, so especially when you're in a red conservative state, especially for the older generations, it's always been so, oh, you don't talk to your kids about certain things, like it's uncomfortable conversations. And I think that it's getting a lot better. We see that it's more acceptable to have certain conversations with our children. Myself, I've always told my kids, like, if you don't know what something is, or if you don't know what something means, come ask me. Don't ask your friends, because 99% of the time they probably don't know either, and they're going to make something up. Then you're going to look like a fool later. So we've had honest conversations about sex, even from a young age. So I never did the whole stork story. I always gave age appropriate answers. But whenever I was asked a question, no matter how uncomfortable it was for me as a mom to answer it correctly, I would just be like, oh, here we go. And, I would do it. But it paved a path to where even my teenage daughters now, they'll come in the room and be like, Mom, what is insert any really inappropriate phrase here? And I'll be like, okay, we'll talk about what it is. And so in that way, I think that once we open those doors even more to where we're having those difficult conversations, our kids are more comfortable coming to us whenever the time is needed to get contraceptives or to talk about sex and stuff like that, and hopefully lower, unplanned pregnancies.
Yeah, that's really important. That's something that, so my relationship with my parents has been fairly open about most things, except for that. So there was like in most of the other areas, like they were really good in this. But actually had like the talk ever. I got taught what sex was basically by porn when I was like 14, and that's not healthy, right? Like that's not a good way to like get any kind of information at all about what life is like. And so I kind of had to like stumble through it myself, because I also moved out fairly young and like just kind of became an adult very innocent and uneducated about a lot of things, being like homeschooled. And now I wasn't sheltered, but I was fairly sheltered. more than I would had I like gone out and lived a little bit more in my high school years. And so I had to kind of like stumble through that and like felt really weird, like asking questions. And luckily I had a couple of older friends that were, I agree with you. Yeah. Don't ask your friends. But I had a couple of friends that were like 5 to 10 years older than me that were actually like good mentors and sources of information for stuff. So I thankfully I had that, but it's really important to have that kind of openness and communication with the next generation, because without passing on everything that we learned in our generation to the next one, they're just going to keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's the same way, even when it comes to politics and religion, for so many generations, it's always been, the things you don't talk about, religion, politics, obviously, sex or anything that would be deemed as inappropriate. But I think that's why we have such a hard time having intelligent debates and discussions about topics now, because it's been, forbidden in the past to talk about these subjects. So people have kind of become, dumb to a lot of things. And we've kind of created that within our society. And so I really would love to see, if I could never hear that again, that would be great, because I think it's important for people to have educated debates. And so that's why I've loved Clubhouse, actually. And I've just like dove right in, because on regular social media like Facebook, it's very easy for you to misunderstand what people are trying to say, take things as rude when they might not have been intended to be rude. And it's really hard to have a educated debate when you're just texting back and forth. But utilizing Clubhouse, where it's essentially like I call it a podcast on steroids or an interactive podcast, it allows us to actually have voice conversations, and you can tell inference in people's voices and say, hey, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain that? And we as a liberty movement have already seen huge gains from creating liberty-based rooms and discussing topics that are important to the other political platforms, and discussing it in a libertarian way in a safe, like inviting area. And like the amount of people that we've had that have said that they are changing their voter registration has been really surprising.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Clubhouse has been awesome. I have a friend that, has been kind of interacting with Liberty Twitter for a little while, but then started interacting with Liberty Clubhouse. And after like maybe 3 or 4 days, finally put like #libertarian in his bio on Twitter, and then kept interacting with libertarians on Twitter, and then took it back out. And just stay on Clubhouse, guys. Like, just ignore Twitter.
Right? Ugh, Twitter can be awful sometimes. Thank you, froze on me, David.
And
I don't know if that's you or if it's me, but I've got full bars on my Wi-Fi. There we go. I didn't know if it was you or me, so I was like, I better leave and come back just to make sure.
That was me.
Okay.
Responsibility for that. That's the second time so far that my internet is just completely just disconnected from my laptop during this show. So luckily last time you were talking and it was good.
Good deal. I was like, KJ, if you're watching, like I'm looking at my Wi-Fi signal right here and it is full to the top. So I know it's not me this time.
Yep. Nope. That will take full blame for that one. Excellent. Looking forward to being in Oklahoma and having good Wi-Fi here pretty soon.
It's not everywhere. That's one thing. So upon the millions of things that we need to improve in our state in order to be competitive with other areas is definitely our Wi-Fi. So obviously in the city, it's fine, but we have a ton of rural towns. And so if you want to live outside the city, the internet options are really horrible. And if we want to be able to be competitive and have people that want to, come to our state and like maybe work remotely initially or anything like that, we have this good old boy system where we have these crazy Wi-Fi companies that don't have very good Wi-Fi, but yet they get all the government contracts. Wonder how that happens.
Oh, big shocker. Big shock. Wait, you're trying to tell me that government is enforcing shitty monopolies on people?
No, it's crazy. Like, who would have thought that would happen?
So I mentioned earlier that Oklahoma has done quite well in the past with some statewide Big L races. Not necessarily governor, but even that's been some good numbers. But you guys are in like the 20s and the 30s in some of these statewide races.
Yeah, Todd Hagopian. I probably say his name in every single podcast. I need to start getting some like kickbacks from him or something. Like he needs to give me some more retweets and be like, since I've mentioned him so many times, he needs to mention me a bunch. But anyways, his commissioner race, he can close his eyes and not even try, and he pulls at least 20-something%. He's doing a fantastic job. He has helped us secure ballot access. How it works in Oklahoma is we have to get 2.5% on any statewide election, and that secures ballot access for the next 4 years. And so thanks to him and some other campaigns as well, I mean, we are good, for at least the next, 4 years. So that takes a lot of pressure off of candidates like me as well, because we don't have to worry about getting petitions signed or anything like that. And then it also saves, a ton of money locally and from a national level, because they don't have to worry about sending people over to help fight for ballot access. So I think they said that it helps us save like $150,000 a year by keeping our ballot access.
That sounds about right. We spend about $250,000 every year in New York to get statewide ballot access. It's a huge struggle, and it's great that there are some of those states out there that have at least a little bit easier of, that's a sensible kind of thing. Like 2.5%, that's something that most of the time we can hit. And even like the Greens and the Independents can usually hit 2.5. Like that's not a huge barrier. And it's a 4-year thing. Now in New York, it's a 2-year like when you get ballot access, it's up every 2 years. But it's just the governor and presidential candidates.
Oh, that stinks.
Yeah. And it's 130 or 150,000 votes, or 4%, I think, whichever is higher, something like that. It's insane. So ballot access is a huge issue for the party. And it's nice to know that there are a few states where we actually kind of have it down and it's covered.
Yeah, we basically have it down to a science now. So I don't foresee us having any issues in the future. Plus, we're growing exponentially when it comes to membership and stuff as well. We've talked about this before. I would love for Oklahoma to be the first like gold state. And there's really no reason why we shouldn't be, because of the fact that, we are very pro 2A. We have gaming, we have the tribal casinos and everything that's here that is ran. We have medicinal marijuana. They're talking about putting, mushrooms on the ballot coming up, as well as recreational. I mean, so we're very progressive as far as a conservative state goes. And there's so many people that I talk to on a regular basis that are Republicans that either A, they just don't realize that they are really libertarians, or there's also the issue where they don't want to change their affiliation to libertarian, because then they feel like they cannot win as a candidate as a libertarian, where they can if they stay a Republican. And so more and more candidates that we have that are winning, we have Chris Powell, that's an elected official here, Chad Williams, David Greer, all of them hold, are libertarians that hold positions here. And I think I'm missing somebody else. So sorry if I forgot about you, whoever you are. But, we are doing really well. And, we're showing that libertarians can win. Our voter registration has gone up a lot. I think in 2017, because I was doing some comparative numbers. So 4 years ago from now, We were at a little over 3,000 registered libertarians. And now I want to say we have like 15 or something like that, 15,000. Like it's grown.
Wow.
It went from like 0.18% to 0.69% of the voter registration going to libertarian. And then the independent has gone up quite a bit too. It went from 14% to 16%. So, I mean, there's a ton of people that are not, Republicans or Democrats. And I really feel that the more and more that we grow and the more that we strategically show how our platform aligns more with the regular everyday people, that the more that our membership is going to continue to grow and that we will end up being a gold state.
Yes. I'm pretty sure I put that in the description for the YouTube video is come learn how Oklahoma becomes the first gold state.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. Gold state.
Okay, so on that topic, then I have kind of a two-part question. How do we get the 20 to 30% into 50 plus 1 and a victory, and how do we transition that 20 to 30 or the victory into the gubernatorial race where traditionally you guys don't do quite as well?
Right. So last election in 2018, Chris Powell did a great job. I believe he got 3.5%, which really coming out the gate, I mean, that was really pretty strong. A lot of it's going to come down to fundraising, because we are at a disadvantage when it comes to people. I say people, I mean, the media wanting to cover us in regards to stories and stuff like that, because we're that third party, the same issues that we ran into with Joe and Spike. We have to be able to at least be competitive financially. And, we have not been across the board from a national standpoint or from a state standpoint. I think that if I remember correctly, so don't quote me on this, I believe that the gubernatorial candidate in 2018, the max that was raised was around 13,000. And then you have the Democrat that raised about 550,000. And then you have the Republican that raised, I want to say close to 2 million. So we need to up our game whenever it comes to fundraising. Now, look, thankfully, there's been a couple of PACs from a national standpoint that have come into play. So that'll be helpful when it comes to donating.
Yes.
Another thing is that once we are showing that we are winners and that we have serious campaigns put together, we're not just running paper candidates, that these are actual good campaigns where we have good candidates that are strong, that have a good potential run, I think that people will be more willing to donate, but we have to go out and ask for that money as well. So for myself, I do not have a budget goal of like 15,000. No, my budget goal is $625,000 because I know that if I want to win this race or have any sort of shot, I have to be able to be competitive in my fundraising. I have to be able to purchase airtime. I need to be able to, print materials. I'm going to need to be able to do all of the things that the R's and the D's are able to do. And so that is going to take asking for a whole lot of money, and not just even from our state. We need to be supportive of other states as well, since we are still relatively small. We need to be able to reach out. Donald Rainwater and Ricky Harrington did a great job of pulling in donations from across the national group. And from these larger races, we're going to have to continue to do that in order to be competitive with our fundraising.
Yes. That was one of the things that I heard, not even from you, but just about you from other people from the beginning, was that you were taking fundraising seriously, and actually wanted a real campaign team that actually did their work and got paid for it. And, we actually ran ads and did things like a real campaign. And also, I mean, you guys have arguably the best treasurer in the LP as your state treasurer, right? Todd is your state treasurer. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I was like, wait. As I started to say that, I was second guessing myself. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Todd is amazing, and I'm very excited for what he's doing both in Oklahoma and then hopefully if he wins in Rain for the national party. So I am excited to see, like you said, there have been other campaigns over the last few years that are actually taking this seriously and doing things on a national front, like really pulling in resources all around. We saw Ricky do amazing in Arkansas. Rainwater was unfortunately not like as high of a vote total as we were kind of hoping for, but still better than almost any other candidate that we've run for governor. And then, like you were saying earlier, like Oklahoma, it's a fairly small state and it's already pretty libertarian. I fully believe that you guys could be the first gold state, or should be the first gold state. And that is so important for the rest of the country. Like if we actually have a gold state in the country, that does more for New York. Like me having you win would do more for me in New York than anything that I could give Larry Sharp in 22. No offense to Larry in any way, shape, or form. New York is not going to be the first gold state. We're not going to help the country in that way. He's doing a great job at messaging and turning New Yorkers libertarian. But, I think that actually having like a really solid victory and being able to demonstrate what our values look like in practice, because right now everyone's just operating off of theory. Everyone thinks that we're just some like utopian, unrealistic idealists that sit in our mom's basement and post on Facebook and read Rothbard all day. And it's not a terribly inaccurate like caricature of the LP, but we really haven't been able to prove that our ideas work in practice since like the early 1700s. And so we need to be able to go back to that. We have a few mayors and some towns that are doing stuff right, but no one's paying attention to that.
Right. And you're very true. I mean,
so
you're very true.
If we can make Oklahoma actually like a libertarian haven.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, we talked over each other again. But you are correct. The best way to show other states what we're capable of is to kind of start that domino effect with at least one. So if we can all band together for a state like Oklahoma, where, as you mentioned, we have a very high propensity of being able to turn gold. Our values as a state are more libertarian leaning than most of the other states. And we have the right support system here within our state to make it happen. So as an individual, as a candidate, no matter how great of a candidate I am, I cannot individually make this happen. It has to be the right candidate coupled with a state libertarian party that are doing things right. And I feel like right now we have both of those things. I'm a serious candidate, as you mentioned earlier. I'm not the most well-known libertarian within the party, but I don't need to be. I am very well known within my state. I have a great reputation. I'm known as a person that gets things done. I'm not seen as a loose cannon. People know where my values are. Coupled with a very strong state LP that's just doing amazing, supportive, showing up for other organizations and stuff together, we're going to be like the power duo that I think is finally going to make stuff happen. And being out in the community and seeing how many people tell us like, hey, if a libertarian is going to win, like this is the year it's going to happen. Like we're tired, we're done. Our past governors and our current governor has proven over and over again that they will say whatever they need to say to get elected, and then they have no intent of actually following through once elected. Right. And they are ready for somebody that's actually going to act on the best interest of them and not the best interest of lobbyists. And, I am in a position to be that person for the state. And if we could win, then that shows every other state, hey, look, they're serious. They have a serious candidate. They won. Libertarians can win. Okay, let's do this. And then more and more people will feel comfortable, and it'll become like a domino. And it's a success story that everybody can use.
Yeah, and we need to prove, like I said, that it works, because we need to show that you get elected and all of a sudden, like, all the poor people don't just die in the first year or whatever. like that's the narrative that's been constructed around us. us is that like if we were able to just like devolve into this anarchic corporatist wasteland and everything would go to hell and there would be no help for poor people and there would be, there's all of these narratives, all of a sudden everyone's just shooting each other because we're all carrying around bazookas all day. It's just an unrealistic idea of what would happen if we were running things. We just show that that's not true. We need to get you elected and then have Oklahoma be everyone's favorite state in the country and have people flooding out of Texas and out of the surrounding states into Oklahoma. And
now pump your brakes. We don't want all of you here. No offense, we love you all. But just like, it's like, okay, we love our state the way it is. We don't need half of the United States to jump up in here. But I appreciate what you're saying, and you're right. So then it won't just be the favorite state amongst libertarians; it'll be the favorite state amongst the general population as well.
Right. I was talking about this on like a super hypothetical the other day, I think in Clubhouse, about how cool it would if after you win the like secession talk in Texas is like counties in North Texas trying to secede into Oklahoma instead of like anything nationally, just being like, we want to be part of this cooler state, which is totally a thing that could happen.
Especially if we get Arlington, because I'm a big Texas Rangers fan, and having them be absorbed into Oklahoma, that would be pretty awesome. But that's just, me. And then it could be the Oklahoma former Texas Rangers or something like that. We'll figure it out.
It's actually the only Major League Baseball game I've ever been to was a Rangers game.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love baseball. I love the Thunder. So that is one great thing about living in Oklahoma is basketball is fun. Everybody else loves football. Not that I dislike football. I do like football. But for me, it's a lot more fun and exciting to sit in air conditioning watching basketball than sitting out in hot, stuffy stands at OU Stadium like this, packed in with people sweating and stuff. No, thank you. I'll pass. I'll watch from my couch.
Yeah, that's funny because in where I'm from, like the only NFL games I've ever been to, I had to like have hand warmers and shit because they were at the Buffalo Bills Stadium and it's fucking cold there.
Okay, that's true.
Before people roast me, I'm not actually a Bills fan. It's just the closest stadium to me, so that's the games that I've gone to. But
you can still roast him. It's okay.
I'm actually, this is probably worse. I grew up as a New England Patriots fan. But
the Patriots are fine. They're just like everybody says the Patriots. It's almost as bad as the Broncos. I always tell people that the Cowboys are not America's team anymore. It's the Broncos. Everybody likes the Broncos or the Patriots. But yeah, at least with me, especially with the Rangers, people pick on me a lot because obviously they have not been a very good team lately. But then that also proves that I am not a fair weather fan because anybody that admits to having their favorite team be a not so great team means they really are a fan.
That is very true. Luckily, the Patriots have been pretty good my entire life, so I didn't have to. Didn't have to ever seem like a fair weather. I was a Patriots fan during Bledsoe before Brady took over. Like I was watching that game. It was actually like the second season that I actually paid attention to football at all. And I literally started rooting for them because they wore blue jerseys. Like when I was really young, it was just like, oh, that's the blue team. I like blue. It's my favorite color. And then the blue team won fairly often. And my family didn't like the blue team because they were all Bills fans. So I was just like, okay, the blue team's my team. And then all of a sudden, our quarterback got wrecked and this new random guy came in and then we started winning shit and we won a bunch of Super Bowls and I was like, hey, the blue team is really fun.
That's kind of how I became an OU fan. Not exactly like that, but so I was born in Oklahoma, but my dad was in the military, and so we moved all over the place. And so when I was in, high school and middle school, my family is all from Texas originally. My dad went to A&M. My brother went to A&M. And so I was raised to hate the University of Texas, right? So when I moved to Oklahoma when I was 18, I worked at Texas Roadhouse as a waitress. And we got to wear college game day jerseys on Saturdays. And so I literally went to a House Divided. I don't even think it was called that at the time. I think it was called something else. But I went in and everything orange over here and red over here. And somebody asked me if they could help me, and I said, well, and I kind of explained, I'm like, I don't know which one to get. I just moved here. I don't really like anybody. I just moved here from Texas. And they're like, oh, please don't tell me you're a Texas fan. And I was like, no, actually, I'm an A&M fan. I hate Texas. And they're like, oh, well, if you hate Texas, then you want to be an OU fan because they also hate Texas, and then it'll just be a smooth transition. And so I said, okay, that works. And then I became an OU fan.
Nice. I love that.
My hatred for Texas is what brought me over.
Nice. I have to admit, I have like very much fallen off of the sports thing over the last few years. And I actually, I used to play sports. I played football when I was really young, like soccer and volleyball in middle school and high school. And, was always like really into sports. That's how I met friends. Even when I moved to New York City, I would go to like Patriots bars because there's like little neighborhoods of like other American cities inside of New York City, and it's great. So you can like go to this block where it's like all Chicago themed sports bars or like all Boston themed sports bars, and it's great. And like that's where I would go to make friends because that was my thing. And then like last year, I think I watched 7 or 8 football games throughout the entire season, if that. And most of them were just because I spent a little bit of time in California and became an honorary 49ers fan for like a couple weeks while I was staying there.
Nice.
Which has been my number 2 team since they picked up our former backup quarterback. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the best quarterback in the league, and I'm sad that he's not a Patriot anymore.
Well, at least you still get to watch him, so there's that. Oh no, I didn't lose you again. Did I, David? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's an omen. I think we're hitting up on an hour anyways. Oh, nope, you're back. Maybe. Come back, David. Come on, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, all right then. Well, I will say, since you are frozen, unless you come back any second, that it was a pleasure being on your show today. It was a lot of fun, good conversation. Anybody who's interested in learning about my platform, visit electnataliebruno.com. It has all sorts of great information on there. You can donate to my campaign there as well. It's connected to my Antidote link. So jump on there, electnataliebruno.com. And you could also follow me on Twitter at Natalie Bruno, on Facebook, which is / Natalie Bruno Libertarian, and then on Clubhouse, it's Natalie Bruno LP. So I was just saying the goodbyes since I didn't know if you were going to be coming back, and we're at an hour.
That makes 3. That's insane. And the worst part is this is like a new Wi-Fi. Like we just got brand new Wi-Fi that is objectively better when it's connected, but it does this shit. Like every like half an hour or so, it just decides to like disconnect from my laptop, and I have to go through the whole like reconnect process, which takes a minute or 2. I'm glad that you're pretty chill at just like rolling with the punches on this.
No, we're good. So I was like, well, since it's an hour anyways, I guess thank you for letting me on the show. And I gave my donate information and my website, where to follow me and where I'm at. And
that's perfect.
All of that.
So I'll just follow up with an added question on top of that. Like, how do people get involved with OKLP or some of the other projects that you were talking about, like outside of the party and some of those like single issue coalitions?
Absolutely. So if you go to oklp.org, I'm pretty sure it's .org. Somebody drop in a comment if I'm wrong. Yeah, I was second guessing myself. I'm like, wait a minute. oklp.org. And we are very responsive now. You can also go to the Oklahoma Libertarian Party on Facebook and follow us. We are very, very up to date on all sorts of things. We also started a Young Libertarians group that meets twice monthly. We do a lunch and then also a happy hour. So that way you can, in a very chill environment, find out more about the Libertarian Party, have some drinks with us, find out how awesome we are, and the great people that we have in our group, and become more involved. But there's tons of opportunities. We are doing tabling events like crazy. So there's tons of opportunities to get involved. If my campaign, especially, there's a volunteer tab on my websites on the electnataliebruno.com where you can submit, and I will very gladly put you to work doing something. Even early on like this, there's still things that can be done even from the comfort of your own home, even remotely. I could use some keyboard warriors that can just like spam my URL all over wherever. So those are all ways that you can get in touch with us. And we are happy to have all the volunteers and stuff that we can get, because it is a movement.
Awesome. Yeah. If you guys want to be keyboard warriors, but like in a targeted way, there are lots of jobs for you.
We will put you to work.
Yes.
Spreading the word of the Libertarian group all over.
Mm-hmm. I need multiple platform managers for various social media platforms for like 6 different things that I'm working for. We desperately need that kind of thing. And it's funny because there are so many keyboard warriors in the party. And then there's a bunch of need for keyboard warriors. And then there's just not a lot of meshing going on there. So
very true.
But I'm excited to see multiple campaigns this year actually like start to do that. I'm really excited about also like Scott Schluter in Illinois. He did a lot of the background work and like the data and the analytics and compiling his campaign team like completely before he announced, and was like actually like about it and doing a lot of that work and putting people where they belong in the team. And so I am very hopeful to see the way that we're actually transitioning into the kind of political force that we need to be to save the world.
Absolutely.
All right, Natalie. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. I look forward to seeing you turn Oklahoma gold.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. We'll catch you back here tomorrow night with Svetlana, the chair of the Libertarian Sex Workers Caucus. So check that out. But until then, keep up the fight. Hey, fighters. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and support the fight by going to Linktree/Fight for Liberty.